Everybody, and welcome back to the Profitable Private Practice Podcast. And today we have Dr. Barb Blasko with us. Hi, Dr. Barb.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're able to be here. So, why don't you go ahead and give us a 60-second introduction of yourself?
Sure. So my name is Barb Blasko. I'm a board certified emergency medicine physician. I've been practicing in the ER for way too long. Uh, I still do practice in the emergency department, just not very many shifts. And 5 years ago, I started a concierge urgent care medical practice in the equestrian industry for people that ride horses at horse shows. And my business is called ShowMD.
That's beautiful. Okay. And then, so on that note, I was doing a little bit of research and I figured out that you started riding at 8 and then you got your first horse at 14. If I'm correct, the horse's name was Myrtle.
Yeah,
Was that right?
yes, good
Yes.
reason.
Okay. All right. And then so how did early writing shape, the way you are as a doctor and as an entrepreneur now?
I think, having a horse and riding horses at an early age gives you a lot of responsibility. When I was riding when I was 8, kind of I went to summer camp and then I started riding. But when I got my own horse, I was responsible for the horse in terms of
Mm-hmm.
making sure it got exercised every day, making sure it was, taken care of, making sure the stall was clean and doing all those things. So I think it gives you a lot of responsibility. And when I was, 14, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so it was kind of my responsibility to actually financially take care of the horse also. So I started, working at the barn, doing chores, doing extra things. And I actually started my own business when I was about 15. And so I think that kind of just tells you that, being being young and being responsible for something and having to pay for it, I think sort of paved my path to,
Mm-hmm.
becoming an entrepreneur. And I don't know really how it shaped me becoming a doctor, but I think it just, makes you responsible, and makes you have to, get up early and take care of your horse and do things that, you're not like out partying with your friends, in high school,
Yeah.
you're taking care of your horse.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's amazing. And then, so could you tell us about the moment where you first entertained the thought of becoming an entrepreneur?
Um, I kind of go back to when I was young and I actually started this business. Horses need to have their hair put in these little things called braids for horse shows. And I
Mm-hmm.
learned how to braid and I started doing it when I was young. And did that all through like my high school, even into college. And then I started teaching people how to ride horses in college and med school to help offset the cost of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I got into residency, and really that's all you can do is be a doctor. Training is very difficult. You have to devote all of your time to learning how to be, a good doctor in your specialty. So I did ride a little bit in residency, but definitely not like I had been doing, previous to that. Um, and, even in my first years out being an attending, I wasn't really riding too much because I was more concentrating on developing myself as a good doctor.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's good. That's beautiful. And then, so could you walk us through what needed to happen between the moment you entertained that thought and then when you got your practice?
sure. So, first when I started back into like competitive riding, um, when I was an adult and working in the emergency department and finally could afford, my own nice horse and those kind of things. Um, I would go to these competitions called horse shows where you go and you ride and you compete against other people. And most of the time you're kind of like there all day. And it's usually I would ride like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And in the beginning I really tried to, not really tell anyone I was a doctor, just because it was my outlet. It was my
Mm-hmm.
escape. I worked really hard in the emergency department. I didn't want to be, a doctor outside of work. I wanted to ride and just, have my own time. Um, and then slowly people started to get to know that I was a doctor. And of course, being a doctor, you want to help people, because that's why we're doctors. So, people would kind of ask me for help here and there. And, like it's hard to say no, and you want to help people. And being
Mm-hmm.
an ER doctor, like, is good because, I know a little about a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
most people, could ask me a question and I usually could, figure out an answer for them. But that being said, I didn't have a way to do formal record keeping. If someone wanted a medication, I could call a prescription into the pharmacy. And, I would, document what I did, but I didn't have anything really concrete or formal. I didn't have malpractice. I didn't have, all those things that you should probably have if you're going to provide care for people, but I also didn't take payment. So I wasn't asking people for any kind of, reimbursement or anything. So, and most of the people I was helping, I didn't think were going to turn around and sue me. And it wasn't for anything, super complicated. It might be for like, a sinus infection or a cut or something, so, but anyway, that kind of people started to, you know, just find out who I was. And it just became more apparent that like a medical service was really needed in this industry because a lot of people, they they spend a lot of time traveling and a lot of time on the road and they don't spend time at home and they go kind of from one horse show to another. And a lot of people don't actually even have a primary care doctor. They don't get a lot of routine testing. They're always really busy and they don't have a lot of time. And then there are a lot of injuries at horse shows because I mean, you're like riding a 1,500-pound animal and
Yeah.
things can happen and people can fall off or they can get hurt. And while there's an EMS service at the horse show, like all they can do is assess the patient and, either give them an ice pack or take them to the hospital. So, they, there's nothing, like an actual medical service. And enough people, started, kind of telling me, hey, this would be a great idea. So at a really big competition before I started my business in 2024, I had like a town hall meeting and I invited a bunch of people to come, and a lot of people came. And I presented the idea to them. I said, hey, you know, if you don't know me, this is who I am. This is what I do. I'm an ER doctor. I've been riding my whole life. Um, I've had a lot of people ask me, if I can, be of service to them, and I'm thinking of setting up an actual medical practice at the horse show. And people were like blown away. They were like, this is amazing. Like, you need to do this and we will support you. And I had, show organizers who actually run the horse show, they supported me. They helped me with like marketing, advertising. They gave me, they didn't charge me to set up at the show. So, they were really behind me. So I think, doing that gave me the courage to, actually take the leap, And even that being said, I still remember standing there talking to all these people, most of them who I really didn't know at that time. And I was like really nervous, I was like, man, I don't know how this is going to go. But, everyone was like very, very supportive of it. So in 20, actually, sorry, I said 2024, but it was 2019 because I started my business in 2020. So I ordered a mobile medical clinic. So it's like an urgent care on wheels. So I got that, and it was just a small 26-foot like box truck, and it had like patient care area and place for IVs and that kind of stuff. And I got it delivered. Um, I kid you not, in April of 2020. And that's like when COVID was like, right, it was just COVID, and everyone was
Yeah.
like, everything was shut down, right? So I'm like, man, what am I going to do? I have this mobile clinic and all the horse shows are closed and what the heck am I going to do? And, but again, like I was still working full time in the ER. So I wasn't like dependent on this income. And, So I just kind of waited it out. And in April, they started having horse shows that were kind of smaller, not open to the public. So I started going to them with my business, and it actually was kind of good because it kind of allowed me to sort of ramp up at a slower speed.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like there was a ton of people there. So I just started developing it, slowly during COVID. And by the end of the year, most of the outside activities had like all the restrictions limited. So horse shows were kind of getting back to normal. But yeah, I'll never forget that. I mean, it was like literally I got it and the whole world shut down.
Wow, that's jeez. The moment you get the check, that's when everything starts
Uh-huh.
shutting down. Wow. So I guess this is kind of around my other question. I One of the questions was like, okay, is there anything you need me to know in order to prepare for this? And something that you mentioned was that you've had this, dream since you were in med school, and it only took you 20 years to get here. And so you're just now telling me that you got, the truck, and then it came, and then COVID happened. So how are you able, I guess, to keep yourself motivated during that time? Like the way, how did you, make sure that your dream didn't die off just because COVID started, or just because it seemed like it was taking a long time?
Um, I think that like everything sort of like got slowed down then. Like my ER shifts were cut, like everything was kind of at a slower pace. But it's interesting because something I learned in EBS that I was actually doing before I joined EBS was just, it's like just keep showing up, keep showing up. And I did that even before I knew it was like a thing, right? So like I kept showing up even if the horse shows were slow. I kept showing up. I kept being there, to serve the riders and to, help people and to get them good medical care and to just be a really good doctor. And, I was just committed to it. And I was like, I got through all of residency and all of medical school, and you just keep going. And like there was no way I was going to quit because when like we had really good days and we were profitable and we served a lot of people, like that was my motivation. I was like, I can make
Hmm.
this happen every day. I just have to keep showing up, you know.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing. That's beautiful. Okay, and then so another thing you mentioned is that you may reach seven figures. You're almost there. So as you're almost there, how are you feeling about that? Was that something that you could, like, earlier, while you were in med school? Is that something you imagined would be happening?
no, if you asked me in med school would I be doing this, I would have probably said no. But an interesting thing, and why I said this was kind of my dream. It was sort of my dream, and I didn't know it really because when I was in med school, um, where I would go riding pretty much every day after classes were done, and my medical school was really close to the barn. It's kind of why I chose that medical school because I could keep riding. But
Yeah.
like, so our classes would be done like around 3 o'clock or something, and I would like literally put all of my books in the library and like kind of set up at a desk I liked. And then I would go ride and I would just leave my stuff there. And it was like a really long time ago. So you could do that and not worried about it like getting stolen and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like I would go and I'd ride for like a couple hours and I'd come back and then I would study. And my classmates were like, man, she's nuts. Like I would go leave, right? And I would take a couple hours for myself. But then I'd come back and I'd study like really, really hard for, 4 or 5 more hours, but I feel like it was my outlet and it was like my thing. And now I've actually recreated that entire thing where I have a business, an office at a horse show, and I leave my office and I go ride my horse and I come back to it. And I kind of
Yeah.
like had this revelation, earlier this year. I was like, wow, like I think subconsciously, like I created this thing, because like there's a picture of me, like on one of my Instagram posts where I'm actually in my riding clothes and I'm like doing an x-ray of somebody. So I feel like, I'll, come back to the office and people are, they're waiting and I'm not gonna be gone for
Mm-hmm.
very long, maybe an hour or so. But sometimes people are waiting and they like need help right away. So like I'll have my riding helmet on and my breeches and my boots and like I'm right there like taking care of them. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting thing that I kind of realized, kind of mid-year that like I've kind of created this like, you know, dream business and dream life. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess my biggest regret with it is like I didn't do it sooner, you know. I really wish I had started this 10 years ago. But, you know,
Yeah.
it's where it is now.
It is where it is now, and you're in your dream business, dream life. So you're doing it. And then, so on that note, kind of, you're a physician, you're an entrepreneur, and you're a writer. So how do you manage burnout or self doubt while you're building your company at the same time?
Um I guess one of the things like as an ER doctor, I think you have to have a certain level of confidence in what you're doing because you're dealing with very, you know, sometimes very critically ill patients and very sick patients. And a lot of times you interact with other doctors like consultants that kind of, you know, demean you or berate you or make you question your judgment. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
developing like a strength of being confident in what I'm doing, knowing I'm a good doctor, knowing I'm giving good care to patients, and kind of having to not really prove that to other doctors, but just sort of let them know, hey, I do know what I'm doing. I think it's given me the
Mm-hmm.
ability to sort of you know, have that in the rest of my life. I mean, definitely doubt creeps in, like, especially in the first early years. I was like, man, you know, how am I ever going to make money on this? And what am I going to do? But, you know, I honestly, I just kept showing up. I really did.
That's amazing. Show up and show out and let the doubt sit in the back seat while you're doing what you're doing. That's amazing. And so you mentioned dream business, dream life, and I know Dr. Una talks about that a lot. So I do have a question. How long have you been in the business school?
This will be my third year.
That's beautiful. Okay, and then so how did you being inside of the business school contribute to your journey?
I mean, there's so much in the, I mean, so much like wisdom, you know, Dr. Una has and all the stuff she says to us. And she like just she gives you self confidence just by the way she talks and by the way she, you know, delivers her messages. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
she's just so positive and you feel like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I can do this. Like, I hear things she says in my brain and I'm like, yeah, Dr. Una says,
Yeah.
I can do, you know. And I think in one of the questions you asked me like what's the best part of it. I mean, she is honestly like she is the best part of it. She made this business school and has given us a place where, you know, we can you know bring our worries and our concerns, but we can share our wins, you know. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
if someone says, yeah, I made you know $1 million this year, everyone's like, that's awesome. Whereas like in the rest of medicine, people are kind of like, oh, how'd they do that? They must have like scammed somebody, you know? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, you know, people are just are really supportive of each other.
So has there been a time where you've been able to, I say, like, tap in on that? Like a particular, I don't know if you're comfortable with sharing, but like a struggle that you had, and because of the fact that you were in EBS, you were able to overcome that.
Um, I think more around like hiring and dehiring, I think maybe is, you know, because I have, um, you know, I have this team of nurses that's kind of like I don't have a full-time nurse, and that's like my biggest struggle right now is like I need to hire a full-time nurse. And this whole
Mm-hmm.
year, like the thing that's resonated with me from a lot of the business school and the teaching is like, who's your next hire? Who's your next hire? And two, 3 years ago, I hired a part-time office manager who I knew for a long time. She used to work in the ER as a ED secretary. I hired her part-time 3 years ago, and now she's full-time. She's my only full-time person. I pay her over 6 figures a year. She is like an integral part of my business, and she really, I couldn't run it without her. And so I'm like, I really want to hire a full time nurse. And like that, I made an offer to somebody, you know, this year. And I was like, man, what if they don't accept? And what if I can't pay them enough? You know, I thought to myself, I said, when I asked them, I said, you know, I can't afford not to hire you. You know, so I think
Mm-hmm.
that the business school like has made me realize that you know the financial investment in other people is really an investment in my business, and it's given me like
Uh,
courage to say, yeah, you know, I can do this. And it's given me tools like, okay, the way I figured it out was, all right, So I paid, say I paid, $50,000, for example, in, you know, salary to nurses over 1 year, but I'm going to hire this person for $100,000, right? Where is that extra $50,000 going to come from? So my office manager and I sat down and we created a list of services I could offer that we could promote that would make up that $50,000. And if I wasn't in the
Mhm.
business school, I would not have any idea how to do that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's amazing. I think I'm gonna just take that quote and just run with it. The financial that the financial support you put in other people is really what you're adding into yourself, the investment you're making in yourself. That is amazing. And so on the note for EBS, there are many things that EntreMD has, and there is something for everybody. So if you're interested, you don't know exactly what you need to do next, you don't know if it's to join the business school, what your best next step would be is to book a call. So you can go to entremd.com/success and you can book a call today. Okay, EntreMD is here to serve you. That is why we are here. So you can book a call and the team will walk you through what your next best step is. And I have another question for you on the business school. Dr. Una talks often about having the dream business and the dream life. So how have you been able, what are your wins around that, having your dream business and your dream life?
So I think I'm at the point where I have been really devoting a lot of my time to this business. So my dream life, I think, is still a work in progress because I still work quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I have learned through the business school, like there's a lot of really great books by Ben Hardy, like Buy Back Your Time, Gap in the Gain. And it's like, how can I get my time back? Um, and I think now that, financially I'm at the point where I'm able to, not have to spend so many hours a week in my business because I figured out other ways to have other people do things for me or to automate things so I don't have to be doing them myself. So I can't say that my life has been, totally freed up with my time, right? Till now, but it's been 5 years and I'm getting to that point. So I think, anyone that's like thinking about joining the business school, I mean, you are going to have to put the time in, right? You have to put the reps
Mm-hmm.
in, you have to put time in, and when I first started this business, I was like doing probably like 80% ER work and 20% this business till I got to the point where financially I didn't really have to work in the ER anymore. And I do still work in the ER because I like it and it's fun and I work at a teaching hospital. But, you know, residents who I work with, they're like, "Oh, I heard you have a side gig." And I laugh and I say, "Yeah, this is my side gig, this ER stuff." And and that's what I say to them and they all look at me. I'm like, "Yeah, I have my own business. I have my own," and most of them know what I do, right? But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
in 5 years, my main gig has become my side gig, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's really, I think, great. And it's interesting because when I first started this business, I had a lot of really wealthy businesses and wealthy people that actually wanted to invest in the company and
Mm.
offered me money and wanted a piece of it. And I said no. I said no, I don't want an investor. I don't want to have to answer to anybody. I said I will make this work on my own. And that meant
Mm-hmm.
working clinically in the ER to, fund the business. And I was actually profitable in my first year, which is like very
That's
unheard of
beautiful.
as a
Wow.
business. And it wasn't a lot of profit, but it was a profit. And year after
Mm-hmm.
year, that's just grown and grown, immensely. But, the other thing is like, I don't really think about it in terms of how much money I make. Like, I really don't. I think about it in terms of I am like running a business at a horse show, and like outside my window is people riding their horses. Like, how amazing is that, right? And like I can leave this office and I can go and ride a horse. Like, that's amazing. And I think, making money, you have to make money. But I've never been a person that's like, I need like $10 million, right? I just, I need money to pay for my horses and pay for my life. But I mean, I come home from, work at the office at the horse show, and like, I mean, I feel amazing. Like, I feel great, and I've helped a lot of people and people trust me. And, yeah, it's a great feeling. So I think that's more important to me than how much money I'm making, honestly.
That's amazing. That is absolutely wonderful. And I can't wait to start hearing about your dream life wins. It's going to be beautiful once it starts happening. But, you put in the reps, you put in the work, and you're going to get there. So that's amazing. And now, if you could teach a struggling private practice owner one thing, what would it be?
Um, I think keep showing up. There's going to be hard days. There might be days where, if you have a private practice and you don't have any patients on the schedule, or people cancel, just keep showing up and figure out, you know, um, I don't know how to tell somebody to be motivated to keep showing up, but like think about, the good days. Think about the days where you had great wins, and, you know, if you just keep showing up, it'll work out.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Keep showing up and it'll work out. All right. So, how can people find and follow you? They want to get to know more about you. I personally want to be inside of this moving clinic, but.
Um, they can look at my website. It's showmd.org. I'm on social media, Facebook and Instagram. I don't manage those things, so you can find them if you I think just look up ShowMD on Facebook and Instagram, and you should
Mhm.
find them.
Yes, show MD underscore.
That's it.
There it is. Yeah. Okay, and so I just want to say a really big thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. This has been amazing. I have never heard of someone who's a writer, physician, and an entrepreneur all in one. So I've had fun this interview and hearing all of your stories.
Thank you.
I just want to say to everyone who is watching, please make sure that you share this episode. Do not allow this episode to be your best kept secret. If this episode has helped you in any way with all of the different things that she's talked about, with continually showing up, where the investment that you make in other people is the investment that you're making in yourself. If this has impacted you, or if you believe that this could impact another doc, I do just want to invite you to share this episode with the doctors inside of your life, and do not allow this episode to be your best kept secret. All right, and a big thank you to Dr. Barb Blasko. This has been very fun. Thank you so much for being on the podcast
Thank
today.
you. Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. All righty, and to everyone else, we'll see you next time.